All right, everybody. Good afternoon. Good morning. Sorry. So we'll start in next 2 minutes. So I'm going to share my screen. And hopefully you can now see. Okay, so I have some messages here. Yeah, good morning. Confused. Zone is saying unstable. I don't know. But we move. All right, so today we'll be talking about server. So creating a server with Node.js. All right, we touched on it during the last class, but we're going to do some more detailed work on the concept today. All right. So you can see that I have a project called Node Server. All right, or a folder, I'll call it a folder. I have a folder that I've called Node Server, and I have two projects inside of it. There's a front-end app, and there's the server. All right, so we're not concerned about the front-end app, the implementation of the front-end app. We're only concerned about server. All right, but at some point, I intend to make calls to our server using the front-end app. All right, so that's when we'll start perhaps interacting with the front-end app. Okay, so how do we create our server? We have a folder created already. We just have to cd into that folder from the command prompt. Ensure that you are in the folder. So I'm going to cd into server. And then now I'm in the server folder. So every command I run is going to affect the server folder. Okay. So, like we said during the last class, to initialize a node project. So if that project is going to run with Node.js, to initialize our project, you should run this command, npm init. All right. So what you're basically saying is that this project is going to make use of Node.js. All right. And you'll be able to take advantage of the npm registry. Okay. So if I run that command, it's going to show me some prompts, and then I can go from there. But there's another way to run that command without entering those prompts, especially if I know that I'm going to accept the default prompts. All right, so you run npm init --y. That's that y is a --y is a flag that simply says yes to every default question. All right. And then after that, you can go directly into your package.json and edit it yourself. All right, so you can edit it. So I could say this should not be index.js. That's the entry point should be server.js or app.js, depending on what you intend to name your entry point. So I'm going to say server.js. And then remember scripts. I could go into the scripts object, and then I'll say start. So I'm trying to write my start script now. And what I want is node server.js. Okay, so when I run npm start, this command should run. All right, that's what I just did. And then you can change anything you want to change, the name of the project and, you know, other things like that. All right, so I'll clear up my console and terminal, sorry. All right, so at this point, we're done with this file. We can now start writing our server code. So I'm just going to click on server and then add a new file to that project. So this will be server.js. Okay. So now we have our server file. If I do anything in there, say server, I could run npm start, and then you see server is printed to the console. Okay, so we have our server there, and it's good to go. So where do we start from? To create a server in Node.js or with Node.js, you would typically make use of the HTTP module. All right, there's a core module that comes with Node.js, which is called HTTP. Okay, so what we'll do is I'm going to be making use of CommonJS. So I'll be using the require syntax. So I'll say const HTTP should be equals to require. It's require, I don't want to require now. Node HTTP. All right, or you could just say HTTP directly. All right, so console log HTTP and let's see what it has. All right, what's the content of it? So I'm going to say npm start to run my code, and there you go, the content of HTTP. So you can see that I have a lot of things here. All right, there is agents, you know, status codes. All right, so you see different status codes here. Okay, 201, in case you're some of you belong to the group of persons who have been wondering, you know, what's the meaning of different status codes. You can see them here. 201 means you created something. 202 accepted, blah blah blah. There is 401 unauthorized. When somebody tries to log in and maybe the details are provided is not correct, unauthorized, or maybe somebody is trying to access a resource that they don't have the privilege to access, unauthorized, or it's something that could be used, all right, for status code. 402 payment required, so 403 for bidding. All right, this is just to let you know that you don't just go ahead and put any status code and return any status code. You have to know what you're doing. There is bad gateway 502. Some of these status response are going to come by default. For instance, 500. If you have a server error, you're going to get 500 by default. Okay, so things like this. Every request that has to do with fives are mostly server errors. All right, so you can browse more about that. And then we have different methods. So you see that we have patch, we have post. We're going to talk about this in more detail later. We have put, okay, and get. Now, for some of us, we have delete also. For some of us, we have never made use of some of this. In fact, for somebody like me, I've never seen some of the methods I'm seeing here now. All right, just to be very frank with you, I've never seen some of these methods, and a lot of developers have never seen them. So I'm trying to say that you don't have to know everything. All right, so you know as is required. All right, sometimes you just get a grasp of the basics, and then you then begin to know as it's required. So if you are employed to work on a project, and then it requires you to make use of, say, this method ACL, right? during your research, you will come across it and then you use it, you know it. You go to another project or maybe that same project, right? You want to write a feature that requires MKCOL. You make your research and then you know that, oh, there's something called MKCOL. I can use it for this and then you use it. That's how we learn as programmers. There's nobody out there who just wakes up and learns all these things at once. And then the truth is that you are going to forget them. All right. If you want to compare and contrast with a lot of things you learned from secondary school, right? You're forgetting them. You're forgetting them because you did not get to use them. Okay. But the things that you learned and you are still using, you will realize that those are the things that, stuck to your memory or the things you used for a long time. Right. That's how it is with programming. So don't try to batch yourself, right, about learning everything, from the get-go. Okay. So that's it. A lot of things you can get from here, but let's see what we are concerned about. All right, we are concerned about the createServer method. Okay, the createServer method. So what the createServer method does for you is that it's going to create a server. Okay, that's what it does. It will create a server for you. All right, so let's see, how do we use it? So what we'll do is that we need to create a server, right? So we're going to create a variable to hold the server that will be created. All right, and then we'll do http dot create server. Okay. Now, if you look at this documentation, it tells you that it will return a new instance of server. And we know that when a function returns something, you can store whatever it returns in a variable. Okay. So it returns a new instance of a server. We're good with that. And then we want to look at the structure of this create server. How do we call it? All right, so you call it with you pass in something to it, right? And that is going to be a request listener. Are you saying this? A request listener. Okay. So the request listener is going to be a function, a callback function. All right, so let's pass in that request listener. And if you look for that, you're going to see that even that request listener, right, also requires also has some parameters that you should expect: incoming message, and then response, which is server request and response. So let's go ahead and just make use of that. So I pass in a callback, which is a request listener. And I know that this callback is going to expect two things from the server. One of them is the request, and the other one is the response object. Okay. So you can make use of this request and response objects. All right, so that's one. Now this server that is returned, right, also has something that we're interested in. So if we console log server now, clear, and let's run npm start again. Now we're console logging server, so let's see. So server has a lot of things, right? Allowed half open and a lot of stuff that you may not use for the rest of your career, depending on how deep you want to delve. All right. But then I am particularly concerned about something that I've not seen yet. So let's see. It could be hidden, but let's see if we're gonna get access to it. All right, timeout, max header, and stuff. All right. So it is not listed. Now there are many reasons why stuff might not be listed, okay, but can't get into that now. But then server has something called .listen. All right. It has something called .listen. And .listen is going to help us to provide a port where the server would listen for requests. All right. So let's say server server.listen. All right. So does listen, as you can see in the documentation here, The listen is going to require you to provide a port, and that port is a number, and then a host name. Okay. So if you check the description that we have here, you can read more to get more understanding. Or just go directly to MDN docs and try to read more on some of this stuff, or even the node documentation itself. So listen is going to require you to provide a port. In this case, we want to run on port 8000, and then it could be any port. It could be 3000, it could be 8000, and then, just like that. So what I want to do is run some port 8000, right? And then I can also specify the URL for this my server. All right. I will say that it should be local host, right? Or I could even use the IP. Okay. And it will interest you that I've never tried any other thing before. So you can go further and try if any stuff will work. Like if you could use 127.102 or whatever IP you like, or you could use whatever text you like, you can go ahead and try. But I've never actually tried to do that before. All right. So we're going to use this, and then you provide a callback. That callback is something that should run once the server has started. All right. This has to do with event emitters, but let's just do the simple things first so that you're comfortable with the whole concept. All right. So what you're saying is now listen, right, for requests to this server. These are server address. But then you should listen for requests to this server that will land on port 8000. All right. And then once there's a request that lands on this port, do whatever we're going to write in this function. Okay. So listen for the requests that come to this URL and lands on this port, right? And then when that request comes, do whatever you see here, like when the server starts, all right? So do whatever you see here. So what I want to do now is console the log server running, all right? Or server listening on whatever, okay? So this is what I want to do. Now, we come back to server, we're creating our server, all right? And what we have actually created here is called a middleware, all right? But let's not go into it now. Let's do something. Let's console the log request. So we're going to make a request to this URL and this port. And the way we do that is by typing the URL 127.0.0.1, and then use your colon and the port number. Okay. So we're visiting this URL and this port on that URL. So I'm going to cut that out and let's use it in our browser. So if I go to my browser and hit that endpoint, what you're going to see, okay, it's not running. So let's start our program, npm start. Okay. So our server is running. So you see it here, server is running. Right. And it's actually listening on requests that are going to come to this URL and land on this port. So if we go back to our browser now and hit enter, we should see that. Is that my previous log? Let's try 8000, sorry, 8000, not 3000. So enter. We're going to see that request has been logged to the console. All right. So the request has a lot of things that you know, if you have the time, right? But most of them do concern you. So what we're looking for is a few things. All right. So we're looking for URL, and we're looking for method. All right. We're looking for URL, we're looking for method on that request. Okay. So let's see. Do I need any other thing again? And then there's one called body. Okay. So let's go back to our code. Gonna try to adjust this. Okay. So let's go back to our code. So we want to do, let's just call it URL will be request.url. Method will be request.method. Okay. So this is basic JavaScript. Shouldn't have to explain that. All right. And then we're still console login. So let's go back. And because there's no response, our server is just hanging there, right? So let's stop and start our server again. And then let's try to hit that endpoint again. So I'm going to, in fact, it already hit. All right. So you see that we have the URL as / and then we have the method as get. All right. So let's try something. Let's do / jokes and press enter. All right. So let's check. You see that the URL is / jokes. And then the method is get. I want to make it very clear that the / you have / by default. So if you don't provide anything, if there's no extra part of the URL, you just have the base URL and the port, right? The default URL is going to be / all right? But then if you have any other thing, we're going to be able to get access to it. So yeah, there you go. If I try to hit something else, jokes, and then pass in an ID and hit it, you see that what we get is this. All right, so that's going to be the URL. Remember, it's coming from request object, and our method is also coming from request object. Okay, we're going to talk about body much later. All right. So let's get rid of this. Now, you notice that I've been doing something very frequently, which is stopping my server and running npm start. If I make any change, I have to stop my server and run npm start. And it's very painful to keep repeating. So we can solve that by using the package called NodeMon, which is Node Monitor. So that package is going to monitor for changes in your code and then restart the server itself. Okay. So let's install it. To install an external package, you do npm install and then the name of the package. So the package name is NodeMon. So I'm going to install NodeMon and watch my package.json file updates. So you see now that I installed NodeMon, you see that there is now an extra key, all right, or property in my package.json that keeps track of all the dependencies of this project. And NodeMon is the first, okay? And then again, you will notice that we have node modules, all right, in our project. Okay, before we installed an external package, we did not have these dependencies and we also did not have node modules. So this is used to track the packages that we have, while node modules is where those installed packages are going to be put. All right, so the fact that we installed NodeMon, we just automatically installed all these things you're seeing here. All right, so you can see NodeMon here. And NodeMon perhaps depends on these other folders. Okay, so we don't have time to go into details on all those stuff. Okay, so now that I've installed NodeMon, instead of using the node command, right, I can use the NodeMon command to run my files. So what I'll do now is come here and update this. All right, so I'll make this NodeMon to run my server so that the node monitor can be aware of this server. And then any change that occurs in the server, NodeMon is going to restart the server for us. So now if I run npm start, which is this script, right, the command that gets run is going to be this. So you see NodeMon server.js. And then it gives us this beautiful output. So if I come here and change anything and say body, for instance, let's see, you see that it restarts the server due to a change, and then the server gets running again. So if I check, I should be able to see we're logging to the console, right? If I hit that endpoint, I should be able to see those stuff appear in the console with the current change having body hello. All right. So that is it. So let's try to do something a bit meaningful. All right. So what I want to do is I want to read from a file in my computer. All right. I want to read from a file in my computer. It's usually tricky, but let's see if that works. So I'm going to create a file that I would call, let's see, I'm going to call this file DB. So it has to be in my project. So I click on server, click on this and say db.json. JSON. Let's see if it works for us. So now this is going to contain JSON. All right, and let's see. So I'm going to do data. This is JSON, so the key has to be a string. And data is going to have an array, and the array has objects in it. So it's going to be title, title. Let's write in JavaScript. Title, and then I'll say not so funny joke. Okay, and then description. All right, will be what did the mic say to its user? All right, so let me just say joke. Okay. And this is a multi-part joke, so that I should get a response or answer, whatever. I'll say, stop spitting on me. Wow, this just came off my head. Nice. All right, so we want to read this db.json file, and how do we do that? Remember, I told you that there is something called FS, the FS module during the last class, right? To read files. So I'm going to require that module. Okay, I'm not about to use that module. Let me take some steps back and explain this file to you as it is on a very high level. High level means simple, right? Low level means very deep. So very high level, what's happening here is this. We have the HTTP module. The HTTP module helps us to be able to create servers, but we do that using a method that it has. HTTP is an object. It has a method called createServer. And when we use that method, right, that method will expect us to pass what is called a handler, right? A handler, or what you can call listener, okay? So what this does is that for every request that comes to this server, this code is going to run. So every time we make a request to this is going to run. Let me show you. So if I put console.log here and say request.url, in fact, we just saw that now, okay? And then I make a request. So making a request simply means visiting our server URL, which is 127.0.0.1/8000. That's what it means to make a request. Every time you hit that URL, you have made a request. And for every time you hit that URL, this code is going to run. That's the handler. It handles the requests. All right. So if I say you refresh here now, you see that we have this console.log statement. If I do it again, stop and do it again, you go back, you see that we have this console.log printed again. All right. So for every request this handler is going to run, it's very important to remember that. All right. Why this server.listing is just simply starting the server, I would say. All right. Funny that it's called listing, but it starts the server. All right. And you tell it on what URL and on what port that server should be started. All right. So this is the code that you're seeing here. Now, what I want to do is this. I want to say that if the request.url, all right, if the request.url is equal to / jokes, all right, console.log true. So let's see how that works out. And then I'm going to get rid of this. So if the URL console.log true, let's do it like this. So, okay. So equals to jokes, request.url. So let's refresh and see. I'm going to refresh. And it doesn't console.log. That means it does not equal /jokes. So let's try again. Okay, let's go back. And that's true. So if I make it /jokes and press enter, you're going to see that we get true printed to the console. All right. Now, instead of true, that's not what I want to do. I want to read this file and return it to the caller. All right. So how do I do that? fs.read file. All right. And read file requires you to provide two things: the path to the file, all right, the options that you want to use to determine the type of response you get, and then the callback function. All right. So I'm going to do the path to the file is db.json. I want to use UTF-8. I think that's the format. And then I want to put the callback, right? So the callback should expect error and data. All right, so if there's an error reading the file, it's going to be passed into error. If there's data, it's going to be passed into data. All right. So what I want to do is I want to say if there's error, return that error, no, or throw that error. All right, let the program crash with that error. And then if there's not, it's going to continue. So if there's error and the program crashes here, it's not going to continue to line 8, right? But then if there's no error, that means line 8 will continue. So I'll say write head, okay? And it should be 200, status code 200, all right? And then what I want to say is tell it the type of data, all right, that you are passing, and that's supposed to be JSON. So I'm going to say content type. All right, type is JSON. Let's do text /plain. Okay, UTF-8. And then I'm going to now say res.end data. All right, so if a user comes now and says /jokes, you see that we now get this return to the user. All right, now if you go to the internet and say free data, I think there's JSON placeholder. Let's see, prefix here. So if we go to JSON placeholder, for instance, now this is a free API, right? What I want to do is let's do let me try. So yeah, so you see this website, right, it has been hosted. That's why you're not seeing localhost or 127 blah blah blah, because it has been hosted, right? So it has a domain name, right? But then this is the URL for the request /posts, right? So that's why if you go to you see that they're telling you that when you hit /posts, you're going to get 100 posts. Okay, so when we hit /posts, you see what returned to us, right? This is what they returned to us, and we can use this for ourselves. Okay, so now for our own endpoint, what we're returning is this. Are you seeing it now? So you see that we're now creating our own API that people can make use of, people can consume. All right. But in this case, which we are going to progress to, in this case, my response is coming from a file, not a database. So this is a file. Normally, your responses will be coming from a database. We'll get to that point to start connecting databases. But then you can also use a file, and even in real world applications, some people save data from files, and there's some kind of data that you might want to save from a file. You don't need to start hitting your server and incurring costs, all right, to get to that data. They are simply static data that you can, just store in a file, all right? So that is it. We have created a very simple server that sells responses from a file. Okay. So I'm going to try something if this will work. Let's try this, change to JSON. Let's see if that works. And it works. Oh, nice. Nice. So what I can do is I can, if I want to do like the posts endpoint, you can just change this to an array. And you see that we're now having an array of objects. Array of objects, just like this. All right. So if we want to add more jokes, we could refresh, see that have more jokes, just like what we have in this website. All right. Now creating servers and endpoints is a very easy thing to do. All right. But then the hard part comes in when you start writing logic. When we talk about spinning up a server, creating endpoints that people can interact with, it's very simple. All right. It means that what I just said means that I would like for you guys to start thinking broadly. All right. Because most of you have a fresh mind, but I have an old mind that is very critical. So there are some disadvantages to it. So what I just said now means that you can create your own JSON placeholder API, put it on the net, and people can start using it. All right. You see? So if we go back to NodeMon, you see that we had a challenge, right? We're trying to okay. All right. We had a challenge, right? So we're trying to solve that challenge. What was the challenge? We discovered that anytime we made a change to our file, we need to stop the server. We run that start command, and then before we get access to the change. So somebody thought about it. Can't I solve this problem? What do I have to do to solve the problem? And he came up with NodeMon, which is Node Monitor. All right. And he solved the problem. Okay. And I'm sure this developer that came up with this website thought about it, that there are developers, front-end developers, right, who want to learn how to consume APIs. All right. But then they don't have what to use because they are not backend developers. They can't go and start creating APIs for themselves. All right. I want to solve that problem. And then he came up with JSON placeholder.typecode.com. So you just go there, you can get sample data, and there are many free APIs on the internet, right? So it means that even though we have something like this on the net now, it doesn't stop you from creating yours because there are plenty of them, and developers use them, thousands of developers. In fact, this guy is now monetizing this site by creating, so you see, people now do ads on his site. So he's making money, all right, from visitors visiting this site. So I was trying to pause in and give you that idea that you can create anything you want. The developers that came up with these ideas, they're not extraordinary in that sense, right? They're only extraordinary because they took the step to actually create something and put it online. All right, so take my advice, even though I've not been able to take it because, yeah, like I said, I'm very critical. When I want to create something and see that it already exists online, I just give up. All right, so you can be better than me in that regard. All right. So another day, I'm going to talk about the node internals to show you that even the node code base itself is online, and you can have access to it to a very minute detail. You can go deep down. You see this fs the what is it called now? Fs the read file here, right? You can go and find out how this code was implemented. And it's online, it's open source. That's when you hear a platform is open source, that's what it means, right? Most of the implementations can be seen online. All right. So these are not extraordinary things, but you have to have the time, have the drive, and then be crazy enough to dare to make a change. All right, so here we are. Now we have been able to access this endpoint. Let me close this. I've been able to access this endpoint, right? But what if we want to access this endpoint from another application? Say somebody wants to. Now, this server that I've just created now, right, lives somewhere in the UK. And me from Nigeria, I want to access the server, all right? What happens is that I can access the server with the server URL directly on my browser, right? And it's going to work. So what I mean is this, what I've just done. So if I reopen this project, let's see, reopen closed tab. If I reopen this project, you see that I can access this endpoint from this URL directly on my browser, and it works. All right. And the same thing we're doing here, right? You can access the URL directly on your browser and it works. But what if I want to access it from a site? That means that we'll assume that I have nodejs.com. I'm the owner of nodejs.com. And somewhere inside this my site, nodejs.com, I want to be able to have access to this code that you see here. It therefore means that within my code, I'm going to make a call to this endpoint and get this code and use it on my site. All right. That means it is now a third-party call. So I'm not calling this guy by default, like directly. I'm not calling this guy. What I'm doing is that I'm calling nodejs.org, and inside nodejs.org code base, right? Nodejs.org is going to now call this endpoint. So you see now, it's now from a different origin. All right, the request is coming from a different origin. So if I would explain that, I will come here. All right, normally you would access it from the browser. So this is the browser, and then you access this guy from the browser directly. So let me get rid of this. You access it from the browser directly, right? And you get your response. It is a direct call to the server. Okay. So this is a direct call to the server. But this is not always the case because people don't go around trying to browse endpoints directly. Most times they consume it in another program. That's why it's called Application Programming Interface, API. All right, because it is the application that interacts with your code base. Users don't typically come here to type to get jokes, right? their application, which is, for instance, Facebook, that's where they visit. And Facebook, behind the scene, will make API requests. All right. So let's picture that. In that case, what we'll now have is this. All right. What we'll have is the platform, which should be, in this case now, Facebook. So they'll visit facebook.com, and behind the scenes, facebook.com is going to now call this guy. All right. So facebook.com now call this guy, and you see that this guy will now talk to the server, send a response back to this, and this will send a response back to Facebook. All right. So now you see that there's now a third party. This is what is called cross-origin request. All right. So cross-origin request, CORS. All right, cause. So that's where the term comes from, cause, because you are from one origin trying to access another origin, right, before you get to the server. Okay, so what happens is that by default, cross-origin requests are not allowed by default. So if let's do this practically now. Let's go to front-end app, as I had front-end app there. So I'm going to stop. No, I don't need to stop. I'll open a new terminal, and then let's cd into front-end app and run npm start. Okay. All right. So our front-end app is running. All right, and there's an error in it. So let's go and resolve that error. Okay, so you don't need to know what's happening here. We're not teaching front end. So this is what we need to resolve. See if everything should be good. So we have our front end app running now, right? Now you see, I am on localhost 3000. This is not localhost 8000. This is 8000, but I'm on 3000. But from 3000, that's within this app running on localhost 3000. I want to cross over and make a request to 8000, which is our server. All right. So if I try to do that, we're going to see that let's inspect our front-end app. I'm just trying to show you calls, right? Let's see. Just search. So we're going to most likely encounter an error. I don't know why it's taking time to give us the error message. But it's going to give me an error. Benny, give me this error fast now. $8,000 about the server. 8,000. So I don't know why that is delaying. Let's start our server again. See if it works. All right, so you see we get the error that I've been looking for, which is the cause error. All right, so this is the cause error. All right, now you see strict origin, one cross origin, and then we get the cause error. So what is the cause error? If I open my console, you're going to see it well. All right, so what's the cause error? The cause error is simply our server is a protective mechanism, right, of our server. Our server is saying, let's go to our server. Our server is saying that I do not recognize where that request is coming from, so I cannot accept it. All right, that's simply what's happening. I don't recognize where that request is coming from, so I'm not going to accept it. Okay. But if it recognizes where the request is coming from, that means in this case, where we are calling the server directly, the server knows itself. All right, you are calling it itself directly. We're not going through localhost 3000 to call it. We're going directly to it. All right, there's no third party. Okay, so it's like I want to buy something from Patrick, and I go directly. Patrick knows me, and Patrick says, "Oh, I've seen you. I can interact with you." Patrick is the server. I'm the client. I'm coming directly to Patrick. There's no problem. But then, if I know Patrick, right? But then I don't know, say Amos. And then Amos is calling me on phone, and Amos is saying, I want to interact with you directly. I don't know you guy. Go through somebody I know. All right. Or come to me directly. Shake it. But then there could be somebody who is really free. All right. In fact, let's depict the first scenario. We want to say go through somebody we know. We don't want you to come directly to me. Go through somebody I know before I can deal with you. All right. So how would that be done? So what we'll do is this. We'll say that response.header, the set header. All right. So I want to set access control. All right. Allow origin. Okay. And then what's the origin we want to allow? HTTP localhost 3000. So if a request comes from this URL, we want to allow it. All right. So if I refresh now, you see that. Let's go back to network. You see that request is not going to throw an error. So there's no response actually. I think that's why that thing is pending like forever. All right. But then you see that there's no error, right? Even though cause is still showing there. Okay. Another day we'll deal with why this is pending for long. But you see that the error has gone away. All right. So we have decided to allow this origin. If we try to call our server or access our server from any other origin apart from this, to not allow it. This is how you can secure your server. So as a company, you have a front-end app, you have a back-end app. All right. You can now decide that I'm not going to receive requests from any other front-end application anywhere in the world apart from our front-end application. So if your front-end application is named, let's say hng.com, all right, you just specify it here. And you know that if any request tries to come from anywhere apart from hng.com, that client is going to get a cause error. All right. So this is how you resolve cause error. Okay. And it's a bit not too friendly when you're writing it using the raw HTTP. But when we get to Express, it's a very easy thing to do with Express. All right. Now, if you want to accept from everybody in the world, you can just put a star here, like an a wildcard. And you should be able to accept requests from any client anywhere. All right. So that's cause for you. Okay, so today we have been able to talk about how to create a basic server, how to read a file from your computer and respond with the content of that file. All right. Is there anything I wanted to cover today? I don't think so. So at this point, I'm going to take questions. I'm going to take questions and talk about two other things before we go. So if you have a question, this is the time to ask.
Good evening, boss. I mean,
Good
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon.
Everything.
Yeah, please, no, all these, call to database, I mean, the HTTP requests, all these stuff, still look somehow, um, cumbersome to me. I don't know if it is with any other person. So, can we have like a, cheat sheet that will really describe if we want to read from a file. So this is the simple syntax you will use. Because
Are you
I mean,
still there?
yes, I'm actually back. The network cut me off. I,
Okay.
I, I mean, like, can we have like a cheat sheet that will really describe the syntaxes for you know, creating HTTP requests, writing to file, reading to file. So that really describe because looking at the codes now, I saw cumbersome. So I can't really get where we are coming from, and then we are going. Then maybe if you had been you know commenting it, so maybe that would have been helpful too. So
All right.
I was
All right.
getting it before, but I'm now confused.
Yeah. It always happens. So it's fine. I get you. I get you totally. All right. So this is what I'm going to tell you guys. The reason why I took time, sincerely, I was I was thinking about when somebody was like, it's already, you should start Node.js. So the truth is that you don't know what we're trying to do, right? What we're trying to do is give you enough background, all right, to get into Node. Because a lot of persons like to be excited that they can do some difficult things, but they don't know that the difficult things are built upon the simple things. For instance, right, concept of objects. That's what's at play here. HTTP dot. We're accessing a method inside an object. That's what's happening here. All right. The concept of callback. That's what's happening here. This is a callback. So all we did set timeout is those times we're doing set timeout and then we put a callback inside of it. That's exactly what we're doing here now. That's exactly it. So this set timeout is like this create server, and then it takes a callback. And the callback, I'm writing the entire function inside of it. And remember when we did function reference and the likes, right? I could have removed this function from here, put it outside here, call it handler, and then reference it here, handler. And my server is still running and I can still make requests. Yes, so let's come here and make request. I can still make requests and everything is running fine, right? This is the concept of function reference here. I'm passing the function by reference at this point. Okay, so the smaller concepts are very instrumental. They are a build up to the larger concepts. Okay, if you have a very faint understanding of the smaller concepts, you might be able to write some level of programs, but you are going to be found out very easily if you join it. If you join a company where you have somebody who knows this stuff and you are coming to fake that you know it, you are going to be found out very easily, right? So I'm trying to say, I'm not talking to the person who asked the question now directly. I'm talking to everybody. I'm trying to say that don't ignore the importance of the small concept. So you see this if now, we're using if statements in Node.js, as simple as the if statement is, right? You see this read file. What's happening here is an asynchronous code happening, all right? So a lot of things that we're doing that depend on those smaller concepts, understanding how those smaller concepts work. All right. Okay. So what I'm going to advise you now is this, and this goes for everybody. You cannot run from reading documentations. So you see, not listen, right? I can't remember how many times I've forgotten this syntax to start a server. I've forgotten it like 1,000 times. With Express, it's easier. It's in my mind. But with the core Node.js, right, I've forgotten it so many times. Right. So what do? I go back to the Node documentation, and then I refresh my mind. Oh, this is how it works, and I get it again. All right. You cannot outsource that part of your learning to your instructor. It's not possible, right? You have a contract in this business you are running. I teach you, you go and try to understand what I taught you, right? You ask question, I try to give you answers, but I can't give you all the answers, all right? But then you go back, I learned this concept today, and you go and read about it, like expand your knowledge about it, you get. So just go back to the Node.js docs. So there's docs here, and anything you want is here. If I tell you the way I learn, you guys will be shocked. I learn it in a very crazy way. I can decide that within the next few months, I want to read about a lot of things from this documentation. And I would ditch tutorials and I'll be reading documentation. So you were asking if there's a cheat sheet, right? Of course, cheat sheets are helpful, right? But then you can't live on them. Most times people will just depend on them. And then there are other things that you need to know that you don't know, because you are dependent on a cheat sheet. Cheat sheet just compresses things and then gives you the simple concepts most of the times. So you see, I talked about OS. COS is here. I talked about, I think in the last path, you see here, you can read more about it. I talk about URL. So you see, this is different from the one I talked about today, actually. So you see URL is there, something that you can use. All right. There are other things. There's process, there's errors to know how to handle errors. There's console. All right. You can read about them here. Then I could be interested in the core, right? That's the core Node.js stuff, right? So what I'm looking for now is this. I'm looking for FS. All right. In fact, I could just come here and say Node.js FS. Doc. I click on it. It's taking me to file system. All right, so you now search. What am I looking for? I'm looking for read file. Read file. Let's see, where are you? All right, so there are different versions of it. So what I'm looking for is fs.read file. I click on fs.read file, and this is it. It tells me that I need some whatever path options. Options is optional. That's why it's in the bracket, and a callback. All right. Path is the path to the file name or file descriptor. Options are different options, encoding, flag, signal. So what I just showed you guys is encoding, because we cannot possibly teach everything. There's no tutorial online. Go and look for it that teaches you everything. In fact, if you go to Harvard, they still will not teach you anything. Quote me, teach you everything. Quote me anywhere. All right. So you cannot dodge it. It's an essential part of learning. That's why in school, they teach you something in class, and you have to go and consult the textbook to understand deeper, because the teacher cannot teach you everything that's in the textbook. If not, you would not need the textbook. All right. So you cannot dodge this part of it. Okay. So I went this route to let you know that, bro, there's no shortcut. Like, it's not the best news to break to anybody. All right, but there's no shortcut to this thing. You must put in the hard work. I thought about FS. Just go online. This is YouTube, and say FS module. Bam. Somebody has taken his time to dig deep into it there, because we don't have that luxury of time in this class. All right, this is just 3 months. You can't learn advanced Node in 3 months. Right? What we're trying to do is get you up and running, and you can take up the rest for yourself. So you see, you click on, I know Dave Gray is a good teacher. You click on it, and then you see that you will gain a lot of knowledge just within how many minutes is there? 28 minutes. All right. But if I want to deliver 28 minutes in this class, I will not do it like this guy because this video has been edited. So you see that it will take more time. We might even need up to 4 hours per class. Okay. And that's not the concept of the whole training. It's a basic training that just seeks to get you up and running. So if you want to get more from it, don't just take my class and think that, oh, this guy will go deep forward. So maybe he has taught me all that I need. No, that's a lie. There's more that you can learn. HTTP module. Type it on YouTube. HTTP module in Node.js. You will get videos that will tell you more about HTTP module. All right. Self-learning is very important. All right. Having said that, there's a cheat sheet online. I don't know if it's free because there's a paid platform. If it's free, I'm going to share the link and send to you guys. All right. But if it's not, I'll look for a free cheat sheet. I hope to even come up with my own sometime, but too much activities. But I'll search for one for you. I think that is good. But I had to give you this disclaimer because people like to outsource hard work. Do you get no? In your case now, you're outsourcing the hard work to cheat sheets. Okay. So I needed to let you know that don't rely on that cheat sheet. Do the hard work, learn these things yourself. I always tell my students, your computer will not explode. No matter the bad code you write, your computer will explode. To not start bringing smoke and say, oh, your code spoils the computer is a lie. So experiment, try things, run code. I'm not saying you go and copy code online and paste and hack yourself. What I'm saying is follow tutorials, follow documentations, try out the codes on your system. All right. If it fails, look for the reason why it fails. Copy the error message, paste it online. All right. And then you become better for it. Okay. Yeah, so that's it. If I have a sheet, I'll send it to you guys. All right. So sorry I took that long time answering that guy. All right. It's needed to be said. So something I related for the calculator task, are we submitting the live link or the repo link? So if you are submitting one link, I would guess it will be the live link. But if you have option for 2 links, you can submit both of them so that you can look at the code and then look at the result. But if you are submitting one link, it's going to be the live link. But this is something you can do. So I'm not the instructor who gave that assignment. That's why I don't have a direct answer for you. You can ask the instructor. Or in the future, if you encounter something like this and then you don't know, you can't in your README file, the repo README file, right? You can put your link there. Go and browse about how to write links. Link there and say that the user, you submit your what's it called now? You submit your GitHub code, and if the examiner is smart, he would go down to the yeah. All right, great. So that is that. But before we do that, right, I'm going to tell you about 2 things very quickly. All right, there's something called process that we can also access. All right, and then there's something called process. Within process, you have env and R. process.env. All right, so I want to add. Hello guys, can you hear me? I don't know why this thing is shutting down. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear now, but we are formally skipping.
All right. So you see, I'm adding username to process.env, right? Again, this is from the principle that process.env is an object. You know
We
that
can't see your
add.
screen.
Oh, yeah. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, sir.
All right. So process.env, see here, I imported the process call module. And then I'm saying process.env.username because I know that .env is an object. So to assign a new property to it, I can just do this, right? And then, so if I bring that process.env to the console, you'll see that I now have user. Go to any file in this program, that is connected to the process, I can just get username from it. Okay, this will come in handy when we start writing environment variables. All right. Most times people do not make use of this, like they don't interact with the process.env directly. So because of some reasons, some technical reasons. So somebody came up with .env. This is a package that you can get on npm. All right, I can handle this for you. In fact, with .env, you don't even need to do this, right? You just come to your project and create something called the .env file. And every key value pair, right, you have in the .env file is going to be stored in this process.env variable, all right? So I know that there are some of you who really understand what I'm talking about, okay? Now, if you don't, just stick with what I've explained. When we start talking about environment variables, we're going to get to the .env module, all right? So there's process.env and there's process.argv, all right? Now, you might have heard people saying CLI, how to write a CLI application, okay? Let me get rid of that terminal and start a new one, okay? It's looking too crowded, so let's go to server and then npm start. Yeah, this is better. All right. So you hear people say, oh, CLI application, CLI application, CLI application. All right. How could you even attempt to write such an application? So is the argv command line arguments. So in this case, you see that I have check my package.json. What I'm running is a command and my file, right? But I can add other arguments. For instance, I can say Victor, for instance. All right, on my project, let me start my project again. npm start. And it's running, right? See this Victor is passed into it. let's go to our server.js and print process.argv and save. See what we have inside there. We have the first thing there is node. So you can see that this node command maps to an executable in our system. All right. And then you see that server.js. Server.js, right? This is where it's located. You see the complete URL. And then you see the third guy, which is the stuff that we passed into it. So this is an argument. All of them are arguments, right? But then you can see that we can access arguments here. All right. So a command line application most times, all right, or a large part of the command line applications has to do with this argv. So you can pass arguments, right? And based on the argument passed, you would make decisions in your program. So what do I mean? For instance, I could say that if process.argv, I'm the one passing the arguments, right? So argv, that's an array 2, right? Equal to Victor. You see that? It is equal to Victor. What I want to do is console log a application started by Victor. And this could be anything. So you see, it says, yay, application started by Victor. All right, because that is true. But if I change this stuff to something else, and say, say wrap, all right, you'll see that it would not print that yay, whatever I do. So let's go start. You see that it doesn't print that message. Okay, because the third argument in the process is not Victor. This Victor could be anything you like, right? You can say if it's -t, if it's this, if it's that. And then based on the argument that is passed into the program when it is started, right? You can make decisions in your app, okay? And there are applications that really rely heavily on the arguments you pass into it, so command line interface applications. All right, so that's just like a very compressed comment on what that is. All right, so go through the videos again if you have to. Some of these things will make more sense, but then I think an assignment will be dropping today that you should be able to apply what you have learned today to achieve that assignment. So most times this thing has to do with use. As you begin to apply it, it begins to make sense. All right, so I would advise that you be patient. All right, guys, thank you so much for your time. This is where we come to the end of today's class. I will see you next week.
All right, thanks.
You're welcome.
Please. Are you still there, sir?
Yeah, I'm cleaning up. So what's up?
I wanted to ask the calculator assignment. I'm not aware of it. I don't know.
You're not aware?
I don't know when it was given, and it's not in our, what's it called now? Our LMS.
I'm not sure if you are correct or just ask a fellow student.
Same here. It's on my LMS.
I'm just hearing it for the first time.